They called her the Marked One. For 18 years, Siren Vale lived in the cellar of the Shadowmere packhouse, fed scraps like a stray, beaten for sport, and reminded every single day that she was nothing more than a curse wearing human skin. She was an Omega without a wolf, a girl born with a strange crescent mark on her collarbone that the elders said was a sign of corruption. They told her she was tainted. They told her she was an abomination. But they never told her the truth about what that mark really meant. When the ruthless Alpha Theron drags her before the entire court to have her mark burned away, in the purification ceremony, he expects her to scream and break like she always has. He expects to erase the last evidence of whatever bloodline cursed her. But fire does not destroy Siren Vale. It wakes her up. What erupts from her broken body is not a whimpering Omega. It is an ancient beast of pure white fur and eyes like frozen lightning. The white wolf has been sleeping for 1,000 years, waiting for this moment. And when she opens her jaws, she does not howl. She roars her own name. And every wolf in that court drops to their knees. The cellar beneath the Shadowmere packhouse smelled of mildew, rusted iron, and decades of despair. A single window near the ceiling let in a sliver of gray morning light, barely enough to see by. This was home. Siren Vale sat on the edge of her thin cot, wrapping a strip of torn cloth around her knuckles. The skin had split again from scrubbing the stone floors of the great hall. She was 18 years old, and she could not remember a single day without pain. Above her, the floorboards creaked with the movement of the pack preparing for tonight. The Bonding Moon Festival. It was the most sacred night of the year, when unmated wolves found their fated partners and alliances were forged between bloodlines. For the Shadowmere wolves, it was a celebration. For Siren, it was another night of serving drinks and dodging fists. She pulled on her gray servant's dress, the fabric so thin she could see her hand through it. As she reached for her shoes, her fingers brushed the mark on her collarbone. The crescent moon. It was slightly raised, almost like a scar, and it had been there since the day she was born. The elders called it the corruption mark. They said her mother had lain with something unholy, and Siren was the result. A wolf-less mongrel carrying the brand of shame. She did not remember her mother. She did not remember anything before the cellar. The door at the top of the stairs slammed open. "Get up here, mongrel." The voice belonged to Ravenna Ashford, daughter of the Pax Beta, and the most beautiful she-wolf in Shadowmere territory. She was also the architect of most of Siren's scars. "The Luna wants the banquet hall spotless before sundown." "Move." Siren climbed the stairs, keeping her eyes down. She had learned long ago that eye contact was considered a challenge. Challenges meant beatings. Ravenna stood in the doorway, her auburn hair cascading over a silk robe that probably cost more than everything Siren had ever owned combined. Her amber eyes swept over Siren with familiar disgust. "You smell like a sewer. I was not given water to wash this week." The slap came fast, snapping Siren's head to the side. "Did I ask for excuses?" Ravenna hissed. "The Alpha King is attending tonight. If you embarrass this pack with your stench, I will personally hold you down while they carve that disgusting mark off your chest." Siren's hand instinctively flew to her collarbone. Ravenna smiled, a cruel glint in her eyes. "Oh, did you think we forgot about the purification? Alpha Theron has been patient, letting you keep that thing. But after tonight, one way or another, you will be cleansed of whatever demon blood runs in your veins." She turned and walked away, her silk robe trailing behind her like a victory banner. Siren stood frozen in the doorway, her heart hammering. The purification ceremony. She had heard whispers about it for years, a ritual where corrupted wolves had their marks burned away with silver-infused fire. Most did not survive, and tonight, after 18 years of waiting, they were finally going to do it to her. She should run. She should flee into the rogue lands and take her chances with the wild wolves and hunters. But something inside her, something deeper than fear, whispered a single word. "Stay." The banquet hall blazed with the light of 1,000 candles. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings painted with murals of wolf hunts and moon goddess worship. The scent of roasted venison, honey wine, and the heavy musk of alpha pheromones saturated the air. Siren moved through the crowd like a ghost, carrying a silver tray of wine goblets. She kept her head bowed, her footsteps silent, invisible. That was the only way to survive. But tonight felt different. There was an electricity in her blood, a humming tension beneath her skin that she could not explain. Every nerve ending felt raw, exposed. And the crescent mark on her collarbone was burning. Not painfully, not yet, but warm, like a heartbeat pulsing against her skin. She risked a glance toward the raised dais at the far end of the hall. Alpha Theron Blackwood sat upon the carved oak throne, his black hair slicked back, his jaw sharp as cut glass. He was 23 years old and had ruled Shadowmere for 2 years with an iron fist and a colder heart. Beside him sat his mother, the Dowager Luna Morwenna, a severe woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. It was Morwenna who had first declared Siren's mark a corruption. It was Morwenna who had kept her alive, only to serve as a lesson to the pack about the dangers of impure blood. And standing just behind Theron, her hand possessively on his shoulder, was Ravenna. Siren felt a strange pull in her chest. Her gaze locked onto Theron's profile, and the burning on her collarbone intensified. What was happening to her? Turn away. Do not look at him. But she could not stop. As if sensing her stare, Theron's head turned. His storm-gray eyes scanned the crowd, searching. They passed over the nobles, the warriors, the visiting dignitaries, and then they found her. Time stopped. Siren felt something inside her chest crack open. A flood of heat poured through her veins. The mark on her collarbone blazed white-hot, visible even through her thin dress, glowing like a brand pulled fresh from the forge. Theron's wine goblet slipped from his fingers and shattered on the stone floor. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping back, his nostrils flared. His eyes went wide with shock, then horror, then rage. No, he whispered, but the word that tore from his lips next silenced the entire hall. Mate. 500 heads turned toward Siren. 500 wolves stared at the glowing mark on the servant girl's chest. And Siren realized with sickening clarity that her life had just become infinitely more dangerous. The silence in the banquet hall was suffocating. Every wolf stood frozen, their eyes darting between their alpha and the servant girl, whose collarbone blazed with ethereal light. Siren wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee. But her legs would not move. The bond, whatever cruel magic connected her to Theron Blackwood, had rooted her to the spot. Theron descended from the dais, each step deliberate, predatory. The crowd parted before him like water before a blade. His gray eyes never left Siren's face, and within them burned something far worse than hatred. Disgust. This is a mistake, Theron growled, stopping 3 feet away from her. His fists were clenched so tight, his knuckles had gone white. The moon goddess would not bind me to this thing. Siren flinched at the word. 18 years of abuse, and still his contempt cut deeper than any whip. Theron. The Dowager Luna Morwenna's voice sliced through the tension. She descended from the dais, her silver gown rustling like dead leaves. Her cold eyes examined Siren, as one might examine a roach crawling across a dinner plate. This is precisely what I warned your father about. The corruption seeks to attach itself to power. The mark is trying to bind itself to our bloodline. That is not how mate bonds work, a voice murmured from the crowd. An elder, quickly silenced by those around him. Morwenna ignored the interruption. She circled Siren slowly, her gaze fixed on the glowing crescent. The purification was scheduled for after the festival, but I see now that we cannot wait. The corruption must be burned away tonight, before this false bond takes hold. Siren's blood turned to ice. Please. I did not ask for this. I did not choose silence. Theron's command hit her like a physical force. The alpha compulsion drove her to her knees. Her tray clattered to the floor, goblets shattering, wine spreading like blood across the stone. Ravenna pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with jealous fury. I knew it. I knew she was trying to steal you from me. She has been planning this, Theron. Using some kind of dark magic to force a false bond. I have no magic, Siren whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I have no wolf, I have nothing. You have that mark. Theron crouched down, gripping her chin and forcing her head up. This close. She could smell him pine and thunderstorms, and the bond screamed at her to lean into his touch. She resisted, trembling. I, Alpha Theron Blackwood of the Shadowmere Pack, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, reject this false bond. I reject Siren Vale as my mate. She is not worthy to stand beside me. She is not worthy to breathe the same air as my wolves. The words tore through Siren's chest like silver claws. She gasped, doubling over as pain unlike anything she had ever experienced ripped through her heart. It felt like her soul was being shredded. But Theron was not finished. Bring the brazier, he commanded. 2 guards dragged forward an iron brazier filled with glowing coals. Nestled among them was a silver brand, its tip already white-hot. The symbol on the brand was a jagged X, the mark of the erased. The symbol burned onto wolves, who were cast out from all packs, forbidden from seeking shelter anywhere in the kingdom. Morwenna smiled, hold her down. Rough hands seized Siren's arms, forcing her to her knees before the brazier. Someone ripped the collar of her dress, exposing the glowing crescent mark on her collarbone. Please, Siren begged, struggling uselessly against the guard's iron grip. Please, I've served this pack my whole life. I have done everything you asked. Please do not do this. Theron lifted the brand from the coals. The heat radiated against Siren's skin even from 2 feet away. His eyes held no mercy, no hesitation. This is a kindness, he said coldly. The corruption would have driven you mad eventually. This way at least you die clean. He pressed the brand toward her chest. The moment the silver touched her mark, the world exploded. The scream that tore from Siren's throat was not human. White light erupted from her collarbone, so blinding that every wolf in the hall threw their arms over their eyes. The silver brand in Theron's hand shattered into 1,000 molten fragments. The guards holding Siren were blasted backward, crashing into tables and slamming against stone pillars. Siren collapsed forward, her palms flat against the cold floor. But the floor was cracking beneath her fingers. Inside her chest, something ancient stirred. For 18 years, it had slumbered in the deepest pit of her soul, chained by something she did not understand. But the brand, the silver, the fire, it had burned through those chains, and now the beast was awake. Where have you been? A voice filled Siren's mind, feminine and thunderous, and older than the mountains. I have waited so long for you to hear me. Who are you? Siren thought desperately, her bones beginning to crack and shift. I am you. I am what they tried to bury. I am the wolf they could never kill. The pain was beyond anything Siren had ever imagined. Her spine elongated with sickening pops. Her skin rippled and split as fur, pure white like fresh snowfall, erupted from every pore. Her jaw extended, her teeth lengthened into fangs that could crush stone. She was growing, and growing, and growing. The wolves in the banquet hall scrambled backward, overturning tables, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. Even the alphas, the strongest warriors in Shadowmere, were cowering, because what stood before them was not a normal wolf. Siren rose on 4 massive paws, her shoulders level with the crystal chandeliers. Her fur shimmered with an internal luminescence, as if moonlight itself had been woven into every strand. Her eyes, once deep violet, now blazed with the pale blue fire of a winter star. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. She was the White Wolf. Theron stumbled backward, falling over his own throne. His face was ashen, his arrogance stripped away to reveal the coward beneath. Impossible, Morwenna breathed, her composure finally cracking. The Lunaris bloodline is extinct. They were hunted to extinction 500 years ago. The White Wolf turned her massive head toward the Dowager Luna. A growl rumbled from her chest, so deep it cracked the windows and sent the chandelier swaying. Then she opened her jaws. The sound that emerged was not a howl. It was a roar, primal and ancient, carrying a single word that every wolf in the hall heard not with their ears but with their souls. Siren. The name echoed through the banquet hall, through the pack house, through the very mountains that cradled Shadowmere territory. It was a declaration, a reclamation. I am not your corruption. I am not your curse. I am Siren Vale, and I have finally found my voice. Every wolf in the hall dropped to their knees, not by choice. The sheer dominance radiating from the White Wolf forced them down, alphas and omegas alike, their wolves screaming at them to submit to this apex predator. Even Theron, alpha of Shadowmere, crashed to his knees, his head bowed against his will. Only one figure in the hall remained standing. He stood in the shadows of the eastern balcony, leaning against a marble pillar with his arms crossed over his chest. He wore a black coat that fell to his knees, his dark hair swept back from a face carved from granite and moonlight. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, the only imperfection on features that were otherwise devastatingly handsome. His eyes were fixed on the White Wolf, and unlike every other wolf in the hall, there was no fear in his gaze, only recognition. He began to clap. Slow, deliberate applause that echoed through the stunned silence. 500 years, he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying effortlessly across the hall. 500 years since the last White Wolf walked this earth, and here she stands, in a backwater territory, surrounded by fools who tried to burn her mark away. He vaulted over the balcony railing, dropping 30 feet, and landing in a crouch that cracked the stone beneath his boots. He straightened and walked toward the massive wolf without hesitation. Who are you? Morwenna demanded, though her voice trembled. How did you get past our guards? The man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Your guards are taking a nap. As for who I am, he stopped 10 feet from the White Wolf and executed a formal bow, deeper than any he had likely given in decades. I am Kalen Voss, High King of the 7 Territories, and I've been searching for this wolf for a very long time. The name rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. The High King, the ruler of all wolfkind, whose citadel in the frozen north was spoken of in whispers. He had not left his territory in 15 years. Some said he had gone feral. Others said he was building an army for a war that would end the world. And now he was here, bowing to the servant girl who had scrubbed their floors. Kaelin straightened and looked into the white wolf's glowing eyes. You are confused. You are frightened. You have been told your entire life that you are worthless. And right now, every instinct is telling you to run or to kill. I am asking you to do neither. The white wolf growled, uncertain. I am not your enemy, Seren Vale. Kaelin took another step forward, his hand extended, and palm up. I am the only one in this room who knows what you truly are. Come with me, and I will explain everything. Stay here, and they will find a way to destroy you. Maybe not tonight. But soon, he glanced over his shoulder at Theron, who was still pinned to his knees by Seren's dominance aura. Your rejected mate certainly lacks the power to claim you now, but there are others who will come for you. Hunters who have been waiting for a Lunaris wolf to resurface. You need protection. You need training. You need the truth. The white wolf's massive form shuddered. The light in her fur began to flicker, the transformation destabilizing. As exhaustion clawed at the edges of Seren's consciousness, let go, Kaelin murmured, stepping closer still. I will catch you. You have my word as High King. The wolf's legs buckled. The white fur receded, bones cracking and shrinking. In seconds, the beast was gone, and Seren Vale collapsed naked and shivering on the cold stone floor. Kaelin moved before anyone else could react. He swept off his black coat and wrapped it around her trembling body, scooping her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Put her down. Theron had finally struggled to his feet, his face twisted with possessive fury. She belongs to Shadowmere. She is pack property. Kaelin turned slowly. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost gentle. But his eyes were pure void. You rejected her. You tried to burn her. You called her unworthy. He pulled Seren closer to his chest. She stopped being your property the moment you pressed that brand to her skin. By the ancient laws, a rejected and banished wolf may be claimed by any territory willing to accept her. I claim Seren Vale for the Northern Citadel. She is now under the protection of the crown. He began walking toward the shattered doors, his onyx guard materializing from the shadows to form a protective perimeter. This is not over, Voss, Theron shouted after him. Kaelin paused at the threshold. He did not turn around. You are right, he said quietly. This is only the beginning. And when she learns what she is capable of, Theron Blackwood, you will pray to the moon goddess that she shows you more mercy than you showed her. He stepped into the night, carrying the unconscious girl who had just changed the fate of the entire kingdom. Behind him, Theron stared at the scorch mark on the floor where Seren had transformed. The air still smelled of ozone and winter roses. She is mine, he whispered to the empty hall. I do not care what she becomes. She belongs to me. But even as he said the words, a cold voice in the back of his mind whispered the truth. She was never yours, and now she never will be. Seren woke to warmth. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. She had never been warm in her life. The cellar was always cold. The thin blankets never enough to stop the shivering, but this warmth wrapped around her like an embrace. Silk sheets softer than anything she had ever touched. A mattress that cradled her aching body. The scent of cedar wood and burning pine filled her lungs. She opened her eyes. The room was enormous. Vaulted ceilings of dark stone arched overhead, supported by pillars carved with running wolves. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, flames crackling and dancing. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see snow-capped mountains stretching toward a sky painted in shades of violet and rose. She was not in Shadowmere anymore. You slept for 2 days. Seren bolted upright, clutching the sheets to her chest. Kaelin Voss sat in a leather armchair near the fireplace, one leg crossed over the other, a book open in his lap. He looked different in the firelight, less like a king and more like a man. But the scar on his face, and the darkness behind his eyes, reminded her that this was the most powerful wolf on the continent. Where am I? Her voice came out as a rasp. The Northern Citadel, my home. He closed the book and set it aside. You are safe here. No one from Shadowmere can touch you within these walls. Seren's hand flew to her collarbone. The mark was still there. She could feel its raised edges beneath her fingertips, but it no longer burned. It felt quiet, content. They tried to burn it away, she whispered. They failed. Kaelin stood and walked to a side table, pouring water from a crystal pitcher into a glass. He brought it to her, moving slowly, giving her time to accept or refuse. The Lunaris mark cannot be destroyed by silver or fire. It is not a brand placed upon your skin. It is woven into your very soul. Seren took the water with trembling hands. Lunaris. The Dowager Luna said that name. She said the bloodline was extinct. She believed it was. Kaelin returned to his chair but did not sit. He stood before the fire, his silhouette carved in shadow and flame. 500 years ago, a group called the Ash Covenant launched a purge against the Lunaris wolves. They believed the White Wolves were abominations, too powerful to be allowed to exist. They hunted them to near extinction. Near extinction, Saren repeated. Your mother was the last known Lunaris wolf. Her name was Isolde Vale. Kaelin turned to face her. She was my betrothed. The water glass slipped from Saren's fingers, shattering on the stone floor. What? 20 years ago, Isolde and I were to be mated at the winter solstice, but 3 days before the ceremony, the Ash Covenant found her. She fled to protect me, to protect the Citadel. She disappeared into the Southern Territories. Kaelin's jaw tightened. I searched for her for 2 years. When I finally found her trail, it led to Shadowmere. But I was too late. She had died giving birth to a daughter the old Alpha of Shadowmere took in and hid away, feeding her wolves, bane to suppress her abilities, keeping her existence secret from the world. He reached into his coat and withdrew a delicate silver locket on a thin chain. The metal was old, tarnished at the edges, but the engraving on its face was unmistakable. A crescent moon wrapped in starlight, identical to the mark on Saren's collarbone. This belonged to your mother, Kaelin said softly. It was found in Shadowmere's vaults after the old Alpha died. Theron kept it hidden, probably not even understanding what it was. He pressed it into Saren's trembling hands. Inside is her portrait. You have her eyes. Saren's fingers closed around the locket, but she could not bring herself to open it. Not yet. The weight of it felt like holding her mother's heart. You are saying I am Isolde's daughter, Saren whispered. I am the last of the Lunaris bloodline. Yes. Kaelin crossed the room and knelt before her, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that made her heart stutter. And if the Ash Covenant learns you are alive, they will come for you with every weapon at their disposal. Why? Saren's voice cracked. Why do they hate us so much? Because the White Wolf does not bow to hierarchy. A Lunaris wolf answers to no Alpha, no council, no king. Their power comes directly from the moon goddess herself. He reached out and touched her hand, his finger surprisingly gentle. You could challenge any ruler on this continent and win. That terrifies them. Before Saren could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the chamber. Enter, Kaelin called, rising to his feet. A guard in black armor stepped through the door, his expression tense. My king. The Shadowmere delegation has arrived at the southern gate. Alpha Theron Blackwood demands an audience. He claims we have kidnapped his mate. Saren's stomach dropped. Kaelin's expression went cold as winter iron. He rejected her publicly. He tried to burn her alive, and now he demands her return. He has brought 300 warriors, and, the guard hesitated, the Elder Council travels with him. They arrived an hour ago by separate convoy. The council? Kaelin's eyes narrowed. They have not left the sacred grove in 50 years. They claim the awakening of a Lunaris wolf requires their judgment. Saren stood on shaking legs, wrapping a fur blanket around her shoulders. What does that mean? What judgment? Kaelin turned to her, and for the first time, she saw concern in his gaze. It means, little wolf, that Theron is going to try to use the old laws to drag you back, and the council will have to decide who has the right to claim you. The great hall of the northern citadel was carved from the heart of the mountain itself. Pillars of black granite rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Torches burned in iron sconces, casting flickering light across the assembled crowd. Saren stood at the base of the obsidian throne, dressed in a gown of deep blue velvet that the citadel staff had provided. Her pale hair was braided back from her face, and for the first time in her life, she looked like something other than a servant. She looked like a threat. The massive iron doors groaned open. Theron Blackwood strode through, flanked by his warriors and followed by Ravenna, whose amber eyes immediately found Saren and narrowed with hatred. But it was the 5 figures who entered behind them that commanded attention. The Elder Council. They moved without sound, their gray robes trailing across the stone floor like morning mist. Their faces were hidden beneath deep hoods, and the air around them crackled with ancient power. Theron stopped 20 feet from the throne, his gaze locked onto Saren. Something shifted in his expression when he saw her. The servant girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had stared down death and emerged transformed. Saren. His voice was softer than she expected. You look. Choose your next words very carefully, Blackwood. Kaelin descended from the throne dais, positioning himself between Saren and her former alpha. You are in my hall now. Theron's jaw tightened. I'm here to collect what is mine. The bond between us was not properly severed. I spoke in haste, in shock. I wish to retract my rejection. You cannot retract words spoken before 500 witnesses, Kaelin said coldly. The rejection stands. That is not for you to decide. The Lee elder stepped forward, pulling back his hood to reveal a face ancient beyond years. His eyes were pure white, blind yet seeing everything. I am Elder Mathis. We have come to adjudicate this matter, according to the old laws. Siren stepped forward, surprising herself. What old laws? He rejected me. He tried to burn the mark from my body. There is nothing to adjudicate. The child speaks out of turn, Ravenna sneered. The child, Elder Mathis said slowly, is a Lunaris wolf. She may speak whenever she wishes. Ravenna's face went pale. Mathis continued, his blind gaze somehow fixed on Siren. The complication is this. Alpha Theron rejected you, before your wolf manifested. Some would argue the bond was never fully formed, and therefore cannot be fully broken. The moon goddess's magic remains confused. The magic is not confused, Siren said, pressing her hand to her collarbone. I feel nothing for him. The bond is dead. Feelings are irrelevant. Another elder spoke, her voice like rustling leaves. The law requires certainty. If there is any ambiguity, it must be resolved through trial. Trial? Kaelin stepped forward, his hand resting on the dagger at his hip. You cannot be serious. A trial of frost, Mathis declared. Combat to submission or death. The winner claims the right to the Lunaris wolf. Theron smiled, and it was the smile of a predator scenting wounded prey. I accept. I will fight for her myself. Then I will be her champion. Kaelin began removing his coat. No. Every head turned toward Siren. She walked forward until she stood directly before the Elder Council, her chin raised, her violet eyes burning with flecks of glacial blue. I'm not a prize to be won. I am not property to be claimed. She turned to face Theron, and her voice carried to every corner of the hall. You want me, Theron Blackwood? Then face me yourself. I will be my own champion. Theron laughed. You shifted for the first time 3 days ago. You do not even know how to control your wolf. I have been training since I could walk. Then this should be easy for you. The hall went silent. Kaelin grabbed her arm, pulling her aside. Siren, this is madness. He will kill you. If I let you fight for me, I will always be the weak Omega, in their eyes. She met his gaze, and something passed between them, an understanding deeper than words. I need to do this. I need to prove to myself more than anyone that I am not what they made me believe. Kaelin stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he released her arm. At dawn, he said to the council, the trial of frost will take place in the Glacier Arena. Elder Mathis nodded. So it shall be. As the delegations filed out, Theron passed close to Siren. He leaned in, his breath hot against her ear. When I win, he whispered, I am going to chain you to my bed and breed you until you forget you ever dreamed of being anything more than my possession. Siren did not flinch. She turned her head and met his eyes. When I win, she replied softly, I am going to make you beg for a death I will never grant. The Glacier Arena was a natural amphitheater carved into the frozen heart of a mountain lake. The floor was solid ice, thick enough to hold the weight of shifting giants. The walls rose in jagged cliffs of blue-white frost, and the sky above was a pale, merciless gray. Siren stood at the northern edge, barefoot on the ice. She wore a simple black combat suit that allowed for full transformation. The cold should have been unbearable, but the fire in her blood burned too hot to feel it. Around her neck hung her mother's locket, tucked safely beneath the fabric. She had opened it that morning. Isolde Vale had been beautiful, with the same pale hair and violet eyes that Siren saw in her own reflection. For the first time in her life, Siren knew where she came from, and she would not let her mother's legacy end on this ice. Across the arena, Theron stretched and rolled his shoulders. He was shirtless despite the temperature, his muscled torso covered in ritual scars. He was showing off, reminding everyone of the battles he had won. The stands carved into the cliffs were packed. Kaelin sat in the royal box, his face an unreadable mask. Beside him, the Elder Council observed with their unsettling blind gazes. Ravenna sat among the Shadowmere delegation, her expression caught between hope and fear. The rules are simple. Elder Mathis's voice boomed across the arena, magically amplified. No weapons, no outside interference, shifted or unshifted. The choice is yours. The fight ends when one wolf submits, falls unconscious, or dies. He raised a withered hand. Begin. Theron did not shift immediately. He wanted to humiliate her in human form first. He crossed the ice with terrifying speed, faster than any wolf Siren had ever seen. His fist rocketed toward her face. Siren moved on instinct. She ducked beneath the blow, feeling the air whistle past her ear. Her body knew things her mind did not. 18 years of abuse had taught her to read attacks, to anticipate pain. But now she could do something about it. She drove her elbow into Theron's ribs as he passed. The impact was harder than she expected, fueled by strength she had never possessed before. Theron grunted, staggering sideways. "Lucky shot," he snarled. He came at her again, faster, more vicious. A backhand caught her across the cheek, snapping her head to the side. Blood filled her mouth. He followed with a kick to her stomach that sent her sliding across the ice. "Get up, Omega." Theron stalked toward her. "Get up and submit like the worthless creature you are." Siren pushed herself to her hands and knees. The old voice in her head whispered familiar words. "You are nothing. You are weak. You deserve this." But another voice, deeper and older, growled beneath it. "We are done kneeling." Siren rose to her feet and smiled through bloody teeth. "Is that all you have?" Theron roared and shifted. His body exploded into his wolf form. A massive black beast with eyes like burning coal. He was enormous, an alpha at his prime. He lunged, jaws wide, aiming for her throat. Siren closed her eyes. "Come to me," she called to the presence inside her. "Let us show him what we really are." Light erupted from her body. The transformation was faster this time, more fluid. Her bones sang instead of screamed. Her fur burst forth like a blizzard given form. When she opened her eyes, she towered over Theron's black wolf. The white wolf had risen. They collided in the center of the arena, a clash of shadow and snow. Theron was strong, trained, and vicious, but Siren was something else entirely. Her instincts were not learned, they were inherited, carved into her blood by 1,000 generations of apex predators. Theron's teeth found her shoulder, tearing through fur and muscle. Pain flared, but it only sharpened her focus. She twisted, using her greater size to throw him off balance. Her jaws clamped onto his hind leg, and she whipped her head, sending him crashing into the ice wall. He scrambled up, limping now, and circled her warily. For the first time, fear flickered in his coal-black eyes. "Good." Her wolf purred. "Let him taste what he fed us for 18 years. Theron feinted left and struck right, going for her throat. But Siren was ready. She caught his snout in her jaws and bit down, not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to control. She slammed him into the ice, pinning him beneath her massive paw. Her claws dug into his chest, drawing blood that steamed against the frozen ground. "Submit," she commanded, the word echoing through the psychic bond all wolves shared. Theron struggled, snapping and snarling, but he could not move. The white wolf's dominance was absolute. "Submit or I will end you." For a long, terrible moment, she thought he would choose death. Part of her hoped he would. But Theron Blackwood was, at his core, a coward. His wolf went limp, his throat bared in the ultimate gesture of surrender. "I yield," he gasped, shifting back to human form beneath her paw. "I yield. She is yours. I release all claim." Siren held him there for one heartbeat longer. Then she stepped back and let the transformation fade, rising in her human form, bloody and triumphant. The arena was silent. Then, from the royal box, Kaelin Voss began to applaud. The sound spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the entire arena thundered with cheers and howls of approval. Siren Vale, the wolfless Omega, had defeated an alpha in single combat. And she had done it without killing him. That, somehow, was the most terrifying thing of all. Siren barely made it off the ice before her legs gave out. Kaelin caught her, wrapping his coat around her shaking shoulders. "You magnificent, reckless fool," he murmured against her hair. "You could have been killed. But I was not." She looked up at him, and something electric passed between them. The bond she had felt with Theron, the one that had been forced upon her, was nothing compared to this. This was a slow burn, a choice, a possibility. Kaelin's eyes darkened, his nostrils flared. "Siren," he said, his voice strained. "You're sent." Before he could finish, a wave of heat crashed through her body. Not the pleasant warmth of victory. Something deeper, more primal. Her skin flushed, her pulse raced. The crescent mark on her collarbone began to glow again, pulsing like a heartbeat. "What is happening to me?" she gasped, clutching his coat. Elder Mathis appeared beside them, his blind eyes wide with something that might have been alarm. "The trial has accelerated her cycle," he announced. "The White Wolf demands continuation of the bloodline. She is entering her first heat." The words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Siren felt it immediately, the shift in the air, the weight of hungry gazes. Every unmated male in the arena was suddenly looking at her with eyes that glowed with feral need. Even wolves who should have known better were rising from their seats. drawn by an instinct older than civilization. A low growl rumbled from Kaelin's chest. His eyes had gone completely black, his wolf surging to the surface. "Mine," he snarled, pulling Siren against him. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made the heat burn brighter. "Get her to the sealed chambers," Mathis commanded. "The scent-blocking wards will contain it. Hurry, before..." An explosion rocked the arena. The eastern wall erupted inward, massive chunks of ice flying like shrapnel. Screams filled the air. Through the breach poured dozens of figures in ash-gray armor. Their faces hidden behind silver masks, carved to resemble snarling wolves. "The Ash Covenant," Kaelin breathed. A tall figure stepped through the rubble. He wore no mask. His face was gaunt, ancient, twisted by fanaticism. In his hand he carried a staff topped with a crystal that pulsed with sickly green light. "Maoreth," Elder Mathis whispered. "He still lives." "I have waited 500 years for this moment," Maoreth's voice carried across the ruined arena with unnatural clarity. The last Lunaris wolf, weak from her heat, surrounded by protectors too drunk on her pheromones to think clearly. He smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. "The moon goddess delivered you to me gift-wrapped." "You will not touch her," Kaelin roared, pushing Siren behind him. "Oh, I do not intend to touch her." Maoreth raised his staff. "I intend to consume her. The power of the White Wolf, distilled into its purest form, I will become what I have spent centuries hunting." He slammed the staff into the ground. A sonic pulse ripped through the arena. It was designed specifically to target wolf senses, a frequency that felt like knives driven into the brain. Every wolf in the arena collapsed, clutching their heads and screaming. Kaelin fell to his knees, blood trickling from his ears. Siren crumpled beside him, the heat and the sonic assault combining into overwhelming agony. "Bring her to me," Maoreth commanded. Two Covenant soldiers grabbed Siren by the arms and began dragging her toward their master. Through blurring vision, she saw Kaelin trying to rise, failing, trying again. She saw Theron, bloodied from the trial, attempting to shift and collapsing. She saw Maoreth's triumphant smile as she was dragged closer. "Your mother screamed when we found her," Maoreth whispered. Crouching to meet her eyes, she begged for mercy. "Will you beg too, little wolf?" Something inside Siren went very cold. Very still, very angry, "My mother." The words unlocked something in Siren that had nothing to do with the heat or the bond or the pain. It was older, deeper, a rage that had been passed down through blood and bone, a fury inherited from every Lunaris wolf who had been hunted, tortured, and killed. "You dare," her wolf snarled. "You dare speak of her." Siren stopped struggling. Maoreth noticed the change. His smile faltered. "What are you? You asked if I would beg." Siren's voice came out layered, harmonic, as if 1,000 voices spoke through her at once. "Let me show you what my mother should have done." She stopped fighting the heat. She stopped fighting the wolf. She stopped fighting everything and simply let go. The transformation was not like before. Before, she had shifted into a wolf. Now, she became something else entirely. White light exploded from her body, so bright it turned the gray sky to noon. The Covenant soldiers holding her were vaporized instantly, their ash scattering on the wind. The sonic emitter in Maoreth's staff shattered into 1,000 pieces. Siren rose into the air, her body suspended by power that had no name. Her wolf form materialized around her, but it was not solid. It was made of pure light, a spectral white wolf the size of a small mountain, its eyes twin stars of frozen fire. When she spoke, the words did not come from her throat. They came from everywhere. "I am Siren Vale. I am the last daughter of the Lunaris line. I am the White Wolf." She raised a paw made of starlight. "And you are nothing." The paw came down. Maoreth screamed, raising a shield of dark magic that held for exactly 1 second before shattering. The force struck him and his remaining soldiers with the weight of an avalanche, crushing them into the ice, driving them through the frozen lake and into the stone beneath. When the light faded, there was only a crater where the Ash Covenant's forces had stood. Maoreth lay at the bottom, broken and bleeding. He looked up at the figure descending toward him, the White Wolf condensing back into human form. "Mercy," he croaked. "I beg you, mercy." Siren landed before him, naked and glowing, her eyes still burning with celestial fire. "Did you show mercy to my mother? To the children your Covenant slaughtered? To the hundreds of innocent wolves you burned in your purges?" She reached down and placed her hand on his forehead. "You wanted to consume my power." Her voice was gentle now, almost sad. "Let me show you what that power feels like." She let a single drop of Lunaris energy flow into him. Maoreth screamed as his body began to glow from within. The power was too pure, too vast for his corrupted vessel. He burned from the inside out, consumed by the very light he had sought to steal. In seconds, nothing remained but ash. Siren stood alone in the crater, the fire fading from her eyes. The arena was silent. Every wolf, the council, the soldiers, Theron, Kaelin stared at the woman who had just destroyed a 500-year-old enemy with a thought. Then Kaelin was there, wrapping his arms around her as her strength finally gave out. "I have you," he whispered. "I have you." Siren buried her face in his chest, the heat still burning through her veins, but manageable now, tempered by exhaustion. "The heat," she mumbled. "I cannot think clearly." "I know." Kaelin lifted her into his arms. "Let me take you somewhere safe." She looked up at him, this scarred king who had searched for her mother for years, who had bowed to her when no one else would, who would let her fight her own battle even though it terrified him. "I do not want safe," she whispered. "I want you." Kaelin's control shattered. He carried her from the ruined arena, past the stunned crowds, past the kneeling council, past Theron, who watched with hollow, defeated eyes. He carried her to his chambers, and the door locked behind them. 3 months later. The northern citadel had never seen a celebration like this. Banners of white and silver hung from every tower. Wolves from all 7 territories had traveled through snow and storm to witness the impossible, the coronation of a Lunaris queen. Siren stood before a mirror in the royal chambers, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back at her. She wore a gown of white silk embroidered with threads of silver that caught the light like captured moonbeams. A crown of woven frost diamonds sat upon her pale hair, and around her neck hung her mother's locket, polished now and gleaming against her skin. She had opened it many times over the past 3 months. Each time, Isoldea's painted eyes seemed to smile at her, proud of the woman her daughter had become. A knock came at the door. "Enter." Ravenna Ashford stepped through, her head bowed low. She wore the simple gray dress of a servant, her once lustrous auburn hair tied back in a practical knot. After Theron's defeat, his entire pack had been placed under investigation. The evidence of systematic abuse and illegal wolves' bane poisoning had been overwhelming. Shadowmere was dissolved, its territories divided among neighboring packs. Ravenna, stripped of her rank and her future, had been given a choice: exile to the Roguelands or service in the Citadel. She had chosen service. "Your Majesty," Ravenna whispered, adjusting the train of Siren's gown without being asked. "The High King is waiting." Siren studied her former tormentor. 3 months ago, she would have felt satisfaction at seeing Ravenna brought low. Now she felt only a distant pity. "Ravenna." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Look at me." Ravenna raised her head, her amber eyes filled with fear and shame. "I do not forgive you," Siren said quietly. "What you did to me left scars that will never fully heal. But I will not become what you were. I will not rule through cruelty." She paused. "Serve faithfully, and perhaps one day you will find your own redemption." Ravenna's eyes glistened. She bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Siren turned and walked toward the balcony doors. Kaelin was waiting on the other side, dressed in ceremonial black armor chased with silver. The scar on his face seemed softer somehow, or perhaps it was just the way he smiled when he saw her. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. "No," Siren admitted, "but I have learned that waiting until you are ready means never moving forward at all." He laughed, a rare and precious sound. "Wise words, my queen." They stepped onto the balcony together. Below them, a sea of faces stretched across the courtyard and beyond. Thousands of wolves from every pack, every territory. They had come to see the legend made flesh. "Ah, present to you." Kaelin's voice boomed across the crowd, magically amplified. "Queen Siren Vale. The White Wolf. My mate, your sovereign." The roar that answered shook the mountains themselves. Siren looked out at the crowd and saw something she had never seen directed at her before. Respect, awe, hope. At the edge of the tree line, far from the celebrations, she spotted a lone black wolf watching from the shadows. Theron. He had lost everything: his pack, his power, his pride. He would spend the rest of his life at the cautionary tale, the fool who rejected a queen. He met her gaze for a single moment, then he turned and disappeared into the forest. Siren felt nothing. She turned to Kaelin, her mate, her king, her choice. He pulled her close and kissed her before the entire kingdom, a promise sealed in front of thousands of witnesses. The cellar girl was gone. The Omega was a memory. The White Wolf had risen, and the entire court was kneeling. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of rejected mates rising to power, vengeful wolves, and kingdoms brought to their knees, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching.